What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining for part 3. What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining again for part 3 of this video series. We're still working on the 64 LS swap build. I'm catching you guys up with another clip. This one's going to be all about what I did to kind of prep the engine and remove things that are keeping the engine connected to the car, and then pulling the engine out. So I'll show you all of that. And I do try to work in some more footage of me actually doing some of the work so you can see how it's done rather than just skipping from this is what I need to do and this is how it's finished. So I hope you guys enjoy. I'm going to keep trying to make things a little bit better, a little bit more interesting. Shout out to 80s Performance, who has supplied a lot of parts for this vehicle. Not necessarily a sponsorship, but they've just got amazing prices. Melvin's just a great dude, so I really appreciate him. So yeah, here we go. Let me show you what we're working on. Alright, so I'm getting back to taking apart the engine, disconnecting everything from the engine. So what I'm looking at is any wire connected. As a favor to whoever buys this next, in case they don't have this plug, I've gone ahead and cut this wire so that they have the pigtail because I won't need it. I've also cut this one just because it needs a new pin anyways, so rather than unbolting it. Some other things, I cut the wires on the distributor. On the heater hose, same thing, just undid the clamps. I'm gonna leave that for whoever gets the engine and everything. Dismounted the relay I had going from the distributor to the firewall. Disconnected the heater core. Gonna undo those hoses. We're gonna have to undo the wires at the starter as well. Disconnected the starter. I cut the wires right at the starter. Just because, again, I'm not going to use it. I'm doing a new harness, but you would want to disconnect them from the starter. I did disconnect the fuel pump already at the filter, and I put a bolt in it and tightened it back down just to prevent any leaks. No fuel actually leaked out of there. So I've disconnected the throttle linkage. I'm going to try and actually use this same linkage for the LS swap since it's drive-by cable and I'm using a similar throttle body. But basically I pulled the pin out, the cotter pin out, and that slipped out. I put the cotter pin back in just to not lose the assembly. On this side, I pulled the cotter pin and slipped it right out of here. On the clutch pedal, I disconnected it here so far, and I disconnected the return spring here, and then there's a spring down there as well on the clutch lever. So I've disconnected those. I'm gonna figure out how this linkage all disconnects because this will get in the way of taking the motor out if it's connected to the block. So that wasn't too bad. It's a 9/16 bolt on this side, and on that side I just kind of popped off. It's like a ball bearing or ball joint. I popped that off, so it pops right out. I'll basically just snap that back in once I get the engine out and keep that nut on there so it doesn't get lost. The next thing I've done here is I've taken the nuts off each exhaust manifold. So there's 3 nuts on each side. I got those off using the long socket 9/16. I'm now looking underneath the car just at the linkage for the shifter. It seems like there's a bolt on top on the bracket right there. There's a nut there, and then on the underside there's a couple. There's a couple coming up and a couple going out, so we'll get those disconnected and the speedo cable. Let me get under there and show you what that looks like. Alright, so here's what we're looking at. I might have to undo these 2, and then back here, let me get a better view. They kind of screw into the transmission this way, so there's one here and one up above. And those are what hold the shifter. So these 2 going this direction and the one I showed you from the top view, that holds all the shifter bracket together. And then the linkage that connects to the shifter is these 2. And then the other thing is the speedo cable, which is actually right here, so I'll have to undo that. So I think between those handful of bolts, or nuts I should say, I should be able to get the linkage separated from the transmission. Alright, so far I've got The linkage is disconnected. These were 2 1/2-inch nuts that go on the sides of the transmission, and this is a 3-speed manual. And then I got one of the 5/8 bolts here off. I'm gonna get that one off up top. That'll free up this linkage for the shifter. And then instead of connecting this at the top of the trans where it'd be pretty tough, the bolt I'm gonna show you inside is where I'll disconnect it. That'll get this whole shifter free, so that way the transmission can slide out by itself. And I do have to take out this speedo cable just because this will get in the way of using a ratchet up at the top. These are 5/8 bolts here. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. All right, so I got the speed sensor out with just a set of pliers. And then I was able to get to that other 5/8 bolt. So this is pretty close. I just need to go up top and do that other nut or bolt, and that should free this all up. I'll have to put a wrench or something on this side or hope that it's a lock washer. Actually, I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put a wrench on the top side, and then on the bottom side I'm gonna gun it off really quickly. Let's see if that works. All right, so I pulled the shifter down and wedged the wrench up on this nut in between the body. Might actually adjust that to go a little bit more left. I hope you can see all the linkage. All right, so we're gonna leave that right there and go on the other side. Get this bolt out or not. Hey. Might actually drop this out the bottom. There we go, boys. So the shift linkage came right out. The bracket at the top, I'll show you. So just up at the top of the transmission there, that top bolt, that one had the bracket bolted to it. It's 5/8 also. So I just took that off and pulled the bracket off and slipped that bolt back in. So we'll be able to take the transmission out. Now everything's pretty much taken off of it and disconnected. So we're getting close to pulling the engine. What we're gonna do next is the drive shaft. Actually, before we get to the drive shaft, what I wanna do is I actually would like to get the exhaust out of the way. I think right now it's only being held up by this one bracket here. So I'm gonna try and get that unbolted and drop the exhaust down. I've already unbolted the exhaust at the manifold. So let's do that. So we got the exhaust off pretty smooth. Had to pry a little bit on this side with the crowbar, but otherwise everything's dropped off pretty easy. So far no hiccups, so let's keep that going. Shifter came off. I connected all the bolts and everything where they're supposed to be so that I remember and I don't lose anything. I think now that the exhaust is out of the way, we're gonna get the drive shaft down. The reason I wanna get that off is because we wanna put the yoke back into the transmission. That way, when we pull the engine, we avoid any potential fluid leaks on the driveway. I wanna keep it clean. So yesterday I did hose down and kind of pressure wash with a basic hose nozzle the whole driveway and all the cracks and everything, so that today when I'm on my back under the car, I had everything pretty much as clean as it could be. This is a cool little piece that was between the exhaust and the manifold. Little contraption here. All right, so on the drive shaft, there's gonna be these U-bolts, 2 1/2-inch on each side. So I've already got 2 of them off. I'm gonna go ahead and get the other 2 off. These U-bolts won't come off. The drive shaft's actually in the way, but that's why there's a little bit extra on the yoke so that it slides into the transmission, and that's how you get your transmission out. So you'll know when you measure your transmission, when you measure your drive shaft to get the length you need, you're always gonna pull it out or measure and like add an inch or so. I don't recall, don't quote me, but you add like 3/4 of an inch or something like that. That way you have room to slip the drive shaft in and out, and that way if your suspension is fully compressed or decompressed, your drive shaft will slide in and out further, and you want to make sure it can't slip out, but also that it doesn't go too far in and damage the internals. All Alright, so those nuts actually came off pretty easy. I'm happy about that. The U-bolts, I just put the nuts back on to keep that in place. I'll probably let the drive shaft go with the engine and transmission because it's the right length for this transmission, so it'll make it easy on somebody. One of the U-joint caps fell off on the other side. But other than that, it came out super fine, super easy, just like I would want it. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull it out and see if that starts dripping, and if it does, I'll put it back in instantly. But the hope is that I can pull it out, not lose any fluid. I want to put a pan under there, of course. I want to pull it out, not lose any fluid. If I do, I'll just keep a pan there. But I need to take that yoke off and slip it back into the transmission. So I'm gonna go ahead and go for that next. So we were able to pull it out, and we have no drips really. It is forming a drip, but nothing actually has dripped yet, or dripped when I pulled it out. But we have a pan there just to be safe, but that gives me plenty of time to remove this yoke. So here's the drive shaft. I went ahead and put tape around the U-joint so that way all the caps and everything stay on there. And then on this side, so we want to just remove this yoke. I'm gonna pinch these clips right here, and when I pinch those, I'll be able to lift it straight out. It'll come out of the groove. And then same thing on the other side. And then what that allows me to do is I'll actually push this one way and take the cap off or slip it out, and then I'll push it the other direction and slip it out. So you kind of have to jimmy it one way, get one side off, and then shove it the other way and get the other side off. So let me go ahead and get that done. All right, let's see if I can show this on video. Oh shit, I've never seen it work so easy. Oh, that's why. They're so brittle, it just snapped. Funny. I ain't mad. Oh fuck, oh shoot. I actually didn't take that one out of the yoke. That one came out of the drive shaft itself. Let's try this one. This is coming out of the yoke. Hey, that one was easy. More. This one looks a little tweaked on this already. Yep, that one snapped off. So there we go. So those are out. Oh crap, there's still a piece in there. So what I'm doing is I'm hitting right on this edge so that this can slip out. Now, we should be able to pull this cap off, super easy. And then we should normally be able to slide this the other way, but we got to get that one out of there. So I'm gonna try and get that. When in doubt, smack it. We're gonna try and spin it around. Get it loose. There we go. That worked. Alright. Sometimes you just gotta think through shit. Never give up. Alright, we're gonna smack it out back the other way. Get our accuracy. Specialty tool. Now usually once it comes out that far you can try and spin her off, but There she goes. All right, that's dose. So that's off. Now this will be our plug for the transmission. We'll stick this in. I'll put a bungee or something around it so that it stays. Get this in. All right, so we got it in. I bungeed it to one of the linkage bolts and then back over to this side because there wasn't anything on the other side to connect to the clutch lever. So that's gonna hold that in pretty good so it won't slip out the back or get caught on something and easily fall out. So we've got everything disconnected from the engine. I think the next piece is just the bolts that hold the transmission to the cross member and the bolts that hold the engine mounts in. So we'll be pulling this thing out here pretty quick. All right, I'm out of the beanie, back in the hat. It got too hot. This is one of the best investments ever. These 20-volt guns with the big bad boy batteries. You just can gun the heck out of everything. And it comes off, but the tough part is trying not to gun things off that shouldn't have a gun on it. So I'm gonna gun off these transmission bolts carefully. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in again. In this video, we're gonna actually be removing the engine and transmission as one complete unit. Trying something new here. I got some feedback from a buddy on Instagram. He's also on YouTube. Check out his channel. I'll try and link it here, and also in my description below I'll drop his link. But Greaser Thoughts Garage, thank you for the feedback. I'll show in some of my videos now, unless people feel otherwise. I'll start showing me actually doing some of the work. The reason I don't usually show that is because I'd have to do a time lapse, and it does take quite a bit of time in the video, so my videos would be a lot longer and get you'd lose attention. You'd be bored seeing all this kind of stuff, like me talking and time-lapsing the drilling. But let's give it a shot and give me your feedback on what you want to see. Boom, just like that. So you don't miss much, but hey, if it helps you, it helps you. Another thing I want to make note of, because I do have friends that have had accidents. Safety first. I got the jack and a stand on the other side. Check the car, shake it a little, make sure it's sturdy. So yeah, let's get back out and look at the engine mounts. Okay, so before we start on the engine mounts, I am gonna see where I'm gonna chain this thing. I do LS stuff more, so those just bolt right into the head, super easy. Or you get the valley cover plate. I don't have a plate for this. I don't have hooks for this. So I think I'm just gonna take the risk. I'm gonna put a bolt. I have a bolt long enough because I collect bolts in my bins, but I have a bolt long enough to go through here. I just disconnected the alternator, 9/16 and a half inch right here. I'm gonna put a bolt through here through the chain, and on the back side, I'm thinking instead of using like an intake hole, I might drive one of these transmission bolts out right here and connect the chain there, so we can get a little bit of tension going on the engine. I think by removing some tension, we'll be able to slide these bolts out and everything a little bit easier. And then I'll actually take these bolts off once I have that all set up. So let me go ahead and get that. Okay, we're locked in, so now we're gonna start pulling out the two motor mount bolts. Give you a quick look at those. There's one, and the other side. We'll get those, the nuts off the back, get those started out, see if we can't get them out or push them out through the back. All right, so we got these bolts out, and kind of crazy, but these were barely threaded, like that maybe. These were sliding in there when I released tension. These just slid way back and forth. So somebody forgot to tighten those. All right, I'm gonna try and run this engine pull solo. That took, I don't know, 8.5 minutes. All right, it's on the ground. I dripped a little bit of coolant from the water pump, and this is all that we got out today. So, yeah, big day. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna actually put like the hardware back where the exhaust manifolds go, bolt the transmission linkage and everything back up so that it's all together, and then I'm gonna actually put these rolling stands on the sides where the engine mounts go, so that way I can move it around where I need it. I'm just going to show you, I put the matching black valve cover on so that I can keep the originals. I also am leaving the linkage here just on top, not sticking out the side. I've got these bolted back into their proper places so that somebody can reference that, and I zip tied the yoke in so that that stays put. I've put this back on over here, all the hardware back on where it goes on both sides. So this thing is pretty wrapped up and ready to be posted for sale, hopefully to somebody who has a 64, 65 and wants, you know, a somewhat numbers matching original build.